In your new book, The 5 Roles of a Master Herder, you address the changing role of leadership in our culture. How is your new approach to leadership rooted in the nonverbal leadership skills of ancient herding cultures?
Well, I discovered this information when I was studying the history of power and leadership throughout history and across multiple cultures. And I found that in nomadic pastoral cultures, these are cultures that move with large animals. And they actually have to be able to move with horses, cattle with horns, bulls, camels, other animals across vast distances. And they have to manage these herds without fences and with very little reliance on restraints. And they are capable of doing this while also protecting the herd from predators and dealing with changing climates. Sometimes you're dealing with times of plenty, sometimes you're dealing with times of drought. And the whole time you're trying to protect the herd from predators that are both human as well as predators that are large animals. And in order to pull off something like that, you need a very sophisticated, socially intelligent form of leadership that involves 5 roles. In our culture, we tend to make the mistake of combining the dominant role with the leader role. We often think of those two as the same thing. And master herders in these traditional pastoral cultures know that in herds of large, powerful animals like horses and cattle, the leader animal and the dominant animal are often 2 different animals, and that they perform very specific roles that are useful to sustaining the well-being of the entire herd. So these master herders learn to differentiate between the dominant role and when and how to use that appropriately, and the leader role and when and how to use that appropriately. They also learned that to keep the herd and the tribe together when there are no restraints or fences, you need to actually bond with the group. And so they're almost always using the nurturer companion role. Not so much as a parenting role, because these are adult animals having their own children and having their own power struggles, and you have to break up fights between adolescent animals, so you need also to gain their trust and their cooperation. You need them to want to stay with you and move with you. So they spend a lot of their time nurturing the animals, taking care of them when they're sick, and just spending time hanging out with them and giving them the feeling that they are part of the tribe. And they also spend a lot of time in the sentinel role, where they're watching the herd in relation to opportunities and threats in the environment. And finally, they separate all 4 of these roles from predatory power. And so they only use the predator role to keep the herd and the tribe in balance with the available resources. They actually eat a lot less meat than we do. And so learning how to use 4 of the roles in their non-predatory forms and reserving the predator role for very specific instances of keeping life in balance, that comes from these ancient cultures. So we don't really have to reinvent the wheel now that all the old fences have fallen down and people have more freedom than ever. We need to learn these ancient skills because our old dominant submission hierarchical forms of power and control that worked very well for a long time in sedentary city-based cultures, these old structures are falling down because people are more mobile. They have more access to information. You can fly around the planet for business or pleasure, and you could work at home in lucrative and meaningful ways. All of a sudden, hierarchies don't work anymore. Fear, intimidation models aren't working anymore. Because if you have really creative, innovative people who are capable of taking your company or your social service agency or your political environment to the next level, and you try to intimidate them into submission, these days they not only quit, but they may go off and start their own business that competes with you. So now more than ever, we need these really sophisticated skills that master herders used to use with large, powerful animals, and we need to use them with people.
That's really interesting. So you alluded to this a little bit, but how do these growing pains manifest in modern life?
We see this over and over again. People moved to the United States because things weren't going well in Europe. And then they came here and they thought, we're going to create this amazing, brilliant new society based on freedom and equality. But then they started using all their old habits. When people get under stress, they start engaging in power plays. They start using old hierarchical dominant submission models. And so you might have rogues and visionaries of all kinds deciding we don't like the old system, and then they go to create a new system, and they start playing all the old same games again that are highly unproductive. So you have people wasting large amounts of time and money in government, in politics, in social service agencies, in nonprofits, as well as in the corporate world, engaging in really bizarre, useless power plays. So if people can learn how to use power in a much more sophisticated way, they're going to finally be able to uplift. And like I mentioned earlier, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. All we have to do is say, wow, if we could take the social intelligence and leadership skills of these nomadic pastoral cultures and combine them with the technological innovations that could only have been perfected in a sedentary city-based culture, then we'll finally have the best of both worlds and we'll really be able to excel.
So how do we recognize which of the 5 leadership roles we may be overemphasizing and which roles we're avoiding?
That's the tricky part, is that most people are good at 1 or 2 of these roles, sometimes even 3. But you really need all 5 in balance in order to operate at a really successful level with free, empowered people. And so the tendency is to pick 1 or 2 roles that you're already talented at or that society has conditioned you to be good at, and overemphasize those roles. And when you overemphasize a role, that role also has a shadow side that's filled with dysfunctional behavior, because you need the other roles to combat that dysfunctional behavior. And so we have an assessment test, a professional assessment that I collaborated with Julie Lynch, PhD, for this book, so that people can take this professional assessment and begin to see which roles they're emphasizing, which roles they may be overemphasizing, and then maybe which roles they're abdicating or avoiding. Because when you avoid or abdicate roles, you also can be really quite toxic to an environment, that, a professional environment that you're working in. So even the nurturer companion role, if somebody overemphasizes the nurturer companion role, their power can go underground. They become passive aggressive. They don't know how to get their needs met, so they engage in certain kinds of manipulation. And they can even hold grudges and create all kinds of drama behind the scenes by using gossip against people that can be very toxic. When somebody overemphasizes the dominant role, all kinds of interesting behavior occurs that doesn't make sense to people unless you understand what dominant animals, adolescent dominant animals, do in nature. These are purely instinctual power plays that they'll engage in. So a dominant animal in a herd, for instance, gains influence by pushing others around and by keeping others away from food or water or mares in heat. And so they have this sort of divisive energy and this also directive pushing energy that, if overused, it becomes very much like a bully. And another interesting thing that dominant animals do when they're in an adolescent state is that they'll attack others for no reason, little or no reason. And we see this all the time. We see it at work with certain people who you seem like you're getting along with them, and then all of a sudden you do something minor and they attack you in front of the group publicly. And you might wonder, why is that happening? But it's an actual instinctual thing that naturally dominant people and animals will do to keep everybody a little bit off balance. And it actually sort of works in the short term. People will defer to you because they're constantly nervous about when you might lash out or attack. But it destroys trust on a team. And nobody chooses to follow an overly dominant person or animal in a novel situation. So overly dominant people will often try to enforce the status quo because they have more power there, because they know instinctually that they can push others and they can intimidate others and they can make others yield, but nobody chooses to follow them toward a new vision.
How would you sum up the importance of this model in leading change professionally and culturally?
Well, the 5 roles of a master herder, first of all, helps you make sense of previously confusing group behavior. And it also lets you teach people how to develop a more mature, balanced, mutually empowering approach to leadership and life. because parenting is a leadership role. And we often find conflicts in extended families based on a family member overemphasizing a role. So this is going to help you not only at work and not only in nonprofits and social service agencies and in community organizing groups and in politics even. It's going to help you at home as well.